This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
From north, south, east, and west, North America, Japan, and back again. This is your home for modern-day wrestling, with the occasional trip back in time. It's Place to Be Nation's main event. Now let's head into Studio B with your host, Scott Criscolo, and the Godfather, Nate Milton.
Welcome back to Place to Be Nation's home for everything in modern-day wrestling, the main event. This is episode 116. I'm your host, the Godfather, Nate Milton, joined by my partner in crime, the master of the multiverse, the conscience of Place to Be Nation, all the way from Earth 37, Steve Willie. Steve, how you doing this week, brother?
Pretty good. I am in my own personal Elseworlds, covered in ice and snow and rain and sleet. Professor Freeze is over here, Captain Cold, all those great DC characters.
Global warming is a myth, though, Steve. So let's not even go there this week. But Scotty, the third member of this triumvirate, will join us a little bit later in the program. But we got a big show this week, so we're not even going to waste time here off the top. We're going to bring in our guest. He is a friend of the program. If you're a longtime listener of Place to Be Nation, you know this man. You love this man. Not only is he the voice of New Japan Pro Wrestling, not only is he the man that brings us Christmas cheer year after year, but again, he happens to be an alumnus of this fine website, this fine network of programming. So it is my pleasure and my privilege, I got caught in between two words, to bring in the one and only Kevin Kelly. Brother Kelly, how you doing, sir?
Brother Nate, Brother Willie, it is good to be with both of you once again. And yes, global warming is a myth, as testament to here in Japan, where earlier this week we had shows in some of the northern towns with record cold and snowfall totals that have never been seen in the month of December, and it's just crazy.
Chaos.
Yeah, they were there too.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing up, being over there in the land of the rising sun, Kevin, because before we get into any of the in-ring stuff or the wrestling business part of this conversation, I'm just wondering for you, with the increased travel schedule, how has that been for you, just becoming more and more of a fixture over there in Japan?
It has gotten easier over time, and it's not something that, because at first you come over and you're sort of this, wide-eyed tourist. Oh, what can we do? What sights can we see? And then it sort of becomes like work, but you're not at home. And so it's a little bit difficult to, well, I'm not on vacation. On vacation, you eat whatever you want, you spend money, and it's crazy. You go, it's vacation. Let's have a good time. No, this is my job now. So now I need to eat smartly, and I need to watch my money and not roll around, Tokyo like I'm a freaking tourist. So that's kind of been, but at the same time, I don't have my own apartment. I don't have my own stuff. And you're kind of beholden to a hotel. So if there's good stuff by the hotel, then you have good stuff to do. Otherwise, it can be kind of boring. But now over time, I've gotten to where I know where things are, and I can jump on the trains easily. Like, for example, today, my son, who's 11 years old, wanted a picture of the Hachiko dog statue from Shibuya Station because they were studying that in school, and he thought it'd be cool if his dad could get a picture there in front of the statue and he could say how cool his dad was. Look, he works in Japan. So I was able to jump on the train, go and get that done for him, and then come back on the train, be here in time for this interview. And it's just becoming like routine life now, being here.
And I know from my own experience, broadcasting, Kevin, it's different, being here stateside than being in a completely different country. But there are certain things I have to do on game day that are just routine, that are just kind of part of my DNA now. Is there a way to still kind of keep that formula, still kind of keep that routine when you're not, at your home base, so to speak?
Yeah, well, you create your own. In my routine now with, steaming my suit in the shower and, making sure that I can find a printer to print my notes because every hotel's a little different. And sometimes you've got to deal with the Japanese operating system on the computer. So you got to get a little help. And it's just different each time. But I try to do breakfast in the morning, try to get some coffee going, and then try to settle into work mode, knowing that 3 hours before bell time, we're going to be at the building.
I'm wondering, like, when you're traveling so much, because this is different than WWE. You're not, going to a couple towns and then coming home on your own for the most part. You're all traveling together, correct?
Yeah, correct. Each faction has its own bus. So I generally ride with the Chaos guys, which is nice. And there's, so it's me and Rocky and, Okada, and everybody kind of has not assigned seats, but sort of like, their normal place of where they sit. And so I try to be not in anyone's way because I'm kind of a guest in their house.
Mm-hmm.
But we all get along well. And that's it. It's generally a very quiet ride, depending on even if it's 10 minutes or, 4 hours like we had last week. It's generally very quiet and everybody rests and we'll watch things on their phone or sleep or whatever. And then we're at the building.
Now you got to be careful. I'm not one to follow many wrestlers on Instagram, but I do follow Kushida, and he has been known to just post video of Tanahashi sleeping, like on a weekly basis. So you got to be careful not to fall asleep.
Right, gets a big kick out of that, and I'm not one that normally does fall asleep. So I live by the philosophy: I don't rib, and I don't want to be ribbed.
Mm-hmm. It's a great philosophy to live by.
I believe that's one of the 10 commandments: rib not, lest ye be ribbed.
Exactly right.
Speaking about the wrestling, Kevin, and we cover a lot of WWE on this particular program, and while one could say that the in-ring product has never been as good as it is now, there's something to be said for the creative, and I think that's a sentiment that a lot of fans share, and that's offered a bit of a runway, a bit of a lane for promotions like a New Japan or a Ring of Honor or things like All In or the Joey Janela shows. And just from being in New Japan, through this time period, do you sense a bit more of an excitement level, particularly when it comes to the North American fans, when it comes to looking for products that are not specifically centered around what the WWE offers?
Absolutely. There is a great deal of interest now in New Japan as fans have sought out the alternative. And so we continue to, make sure that everybody knows that New Japan World is open, ready, and available to them. And, oh, by the way, it's okay. It's not like you have to go back and binge watch 5 or 6 seasons to get caught up to the now. You can get caught up to the now pretty darn quick. And that is important. So we always do, I'll always try to provide a little backstory for commentary on any show, because I'm never quite sure if I've got somebody new tuning in for the first time. I want to make this as easy as it can be, as easily digestible as it should be, because as we've talked about before, that's when wrestling works best. When it's simple and it's easy and everybody can understand it.
I want to kind of jump ahead just because that's a good taking off point with Wrestle Kingdom 13 coming up. We do see a lot of fans at their site. We saw it last year, actually, quite a bit, where there were people who are brand new to New Japan who hopped on New Japan World with Wrestle Kingdom. What would you tell new people coming on to the first time, like who are maybe going back and forth? Should I subscribe? Should I, put down the $9 for this? How would you sell them on New Japan, and particularly starting off now with Wrestle Kingdom?
It's the perfect jumping off point because it's the biggest show of the year. It encapsulates everything that has happened over the past year, and invariably between the results of Wrestle Kingdom and New Year's Dash the next day, it's the jumping off point for the new year. So it's the best place to begin. Everything from Tanahashi's year is all built around this match, but everything had to happen. He had to win the G1. He had to be in physical peril. He had to be almost written off as I'm working backwards. And, a year ago, it would have been taking bets on whether or not Tanahashi would be in this spot. Yeah, he was still the Intercontinental Champion, but he didn't seem to have that, that main event level physical style anymore, but he's been able to recapture the magic. And now here we are. And of course, with Kenny finally overcoming Okada and defeating him at Dominion. And this is his big title test. This is his true test. And if he doesn't pass, then, history will write forever whether or not, the chase was better than the actual holding of the title for Omega.
And, getting to the point of the North American viewer, I think that maybe this year more than any other Wrestle Kingdom, Kevin, is a great way to kind of get your feet wet if you're somebody that's new to the product, because not only do you have Omega and Tanahashi, but you've got Jericho, Naito, you've got Cody and Juice Robinson. And in what I think, and I'm not Nostradamus here, I'm not stepping out on some crazy branch, some crazy limb, but I think Ibushi and Ospreay could be something that folks are talking about for a while. Just looking up and down the card of the matches that are announced so far, Kevin, do you think this has the potential to be one of the most interesting and accessible Wrestle Kingdoms that we've seen in a while?
Well, you're so right, because with so many singles matches, that I think it will be very easy for fans to understand the participants and the stories if you are brand new. And if you are a longtime fan, then everybody can appreciate. I think this show will give everybody a great appreciation for the variety of in-ring style that we will see in New Japan. We're going to see one type of match with Zack Sabre Jr. and Tomohiro Ishii for the British heavyweight. See another style with Jericho and Naito, and we're going to see another style with Tanahashi and Omega, and then branching off of that, we'll see Okada and Switchblade Jay White in a different Okada match than we would have seen before. Something so personal. On top of that, we're going to see some great tag team matches, and the 2 3-team matches, which are kind of a Wrestle Kingdom tradition, at least over the last few years, especially when it comes to the junior heavyweight titles. So I think we get a little bit of something for everybody. And I think by the end of the night, it will be, if all goes to plan and if everybody executes the matches that they wish to have, I think people will be talking about this event and these particular matches for a long time to come.
Well, after Wrestle Kingdom does happen, there are some pretty big plans coming up in 2019, and the plans just keep rolling out. We already have the G1 selling out almost immediately at MSG, and there's even been some announcements for other cards with some of in the United States, and I think it was both Charlotte and in California again. Can you tell us a little bit about just some more of the growth opportunities that you're seeing in New Japan, and also maybe some unforeseen hiccups or successes that have happened over the last year that comes with any kind of growth in a business?
No, I think, when you look back at, the G1 Supercard at MSG selling out as quickly as it did, that was something that took everyone's breath away. And, listen, I love ROH. I was part of ROH for a long time. Let's be New Japan sold that card out. Okay, folks.
Oh, absolutely.
Mickey. And I think when we see that, it's going to have a heavy New Japan flavor. That's what sold the tickets, and that's what's going to main event the show. But not what's the growth opportunities around the world for New Japan are continuing, and I guess it's Super Bowl weekend with the Los Angeles event at the Globe Theater, and then in Charlotte, my kind of home away from home in the U.S. At Grady Cole on the 2nd of February or the first of February.
Yeah, there's a day off in between. Yep.
Right, and more. I'm sure more to come. And then I think the Australia thing is still going strong, and I have a feeling that we'll have events announced for 2019 in Australia. And it just gets to be, okay, there's only so many wrestlers and there's only so many places you can be at the same time. So it's hard to be in all corners of the world at once. And that, I think, will be the challenge. How thin can we spread things without diluting the quality?
So speaking of being in multiple places and multiple times, back from the multiverse, let me bring in the third man here, our other co-host, Scott Criscola. Scotty, we're here with Kevin Kelly. And I know you got some questions for Brother Kelly, so I will cede the mic to you, sir.
Who? Never heard of him.
What are you playing? What are you playing with tinfoil in the background?
Shh! It's my Terrorizing robe. I wore it just for you.
Oh my God! It's like it's his first day. It's his first show.
Well, once you talk, it kind of settles down. So that's what it is. That's what happens when the budget goes down. Kevin freaking Kelly, it's good to talk to you, man. It's been a while.
I know. How are you?
I'm great. I'm trying to remember. Is this your first time on Main Event? I think you've been on before.
Second, third, at least two.
Okay. So it's been a couple of years, but it's good to see you. It's good to have you with us, and thank you for joining us. And Steve and Brother Nate, thank you for getting started. Much appreciated. Just to let everyone know, I'm sure you guys talked about it at the beginning. We're gonna. I don't know if you're able to stick around with us, Kev, but we're gonna, in honor of one of the fallen from the days of New Japan and of course WWF, the Dynamite Kid. We're gonna have a little fun with our New Japan Classic match pick in the B block. So hopefully you could stick around. Yes. By the way, our last two matches that we did in our last episode, you narrated one of them. It was kind of badass, actually. It was from it was the 79 one, right, Steve? It was yes, it was Hiro Matsuda and Saito against Riki Choshu, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Who's the other guy, Steve? Sakaguchi for the NWA North American titles. You narrated the match. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, how did you go about doing those? Because we saw the classic matches pop up in English, and it was not what I expected. I was expecting, well, the infamous one is the Michael Cole and Mick Foley. I think it was over San Martino and Zbyszko, and it was kind of a little bit of ha-ha going on as well with it. But you did it a lot differently than I expected.
Well, we're going to call it as straight as we can. Me personally, I'm not a fan of recalling these old matches. To me, they stand sort of as museum pieces, but I think what you're going to see is a lot more of introductory narrations going forward. Hey, we're here on February 2nd, 1981, as we take this journey back in the NJPW World Archives, and we're here in Sapporo for this matchup involving so-and-so versus Antonio Inoki. That's what we're going to see. Mm-hmm. In previous months where Inoki had been, frustrated in not being able to pick up a pinfall, but was victorious via countout, he swore before a match that he was going to get the win, while Stan Hansen promised to take down Inoki once and for all with the Western Lariat and defeat him by pinfall. That type of thing.
Right.
And then a little react on the backside based upon the result.
Right.
That's pretty much what we're going to do and what we're going to get to. Because I wasn't there, and I was in sixth grade in 1979. So look, to go back in time and recall a match as if I was there, and I'm not going to do it like, kind of, I don't like to do the director's cut kind of thing, even though we've done some of that. Mm-hmm. Just trying to find what works best. I prefer narrative description, introduction, enjoy the match, and then we'll explain to you what all this means on the other side.
Right. Which is pretty much what you did. That's pretty much what you did for that match. You didn't play by play it. It wasn't like a WWF or WWE DVD extra. It wasn't like that. That's pretty much what you did. You narrated it, and then the match happened, and the Japanese announcers, and then you it was a 2 out of 3 falls. So you kind of finished off the first fall, set us up for the second one, and that's pretty much how you did it. Anyway, it was cool to hear your voice on there.
Well, good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you guys you just talked about that Garden card, of course, coming up Mania weekend. I have a question, Kevin, about Ring of Honor and New Japan in the sense of the talent. A lot of people have been saying that NXT is being the promotions from NXT to the main roster in WWE are too fast. And for the first, this coming show at the Garden in Mania weekend is the first time that I've ever heard anybody say New Japan's the one that sold it out, not Ring of Honor. Is Ring of Honor, and it's rare that we've heard this for a while because ROH has been kicking ass and taking names for the last decade. But is Ring of Honor running out of guys? Like, are they going too fast, whether leaving for WWE or wanting to, or to NXT, or wanting to have the schedule New Japan gives them, where they let them do whatever they want? I guess it seems in essence, is Ring of Honor like not recouping the talent fast enough, and that's why maybe they're leaning more on New Japan? What do you think of that?
Well, I said earlier that I love ROH. Give them all the credit in the world for getting the management of Sinclair to help them clear the date, but that it was the idea of seeing the New Japan stars in Madison Square Garden. That's what sold the building out. Mm-hmm. So that's how a partnership works. Mm. I don't care what we have to do as long as the building is sold out. So right. It works for me. I think it's for ROH. It's a good opportunity. Let's look at it positively. It's a good opportunity for them to rebuild. Some would say that they probably should have been planning for this all along, knowing just the rapid rate of departure and whatever over the last few years. It's been a complete roster turnover. Aside from the Briscoes and Jay Lethal, pretty much Dalton Castle and Silas Young and Matt Taven, everybody else kind of brand new. So we'll see what happens. And you get an opportunity to go out on the open market and see what's there, with the indies being a little threadbare right now. So you're going to have to mix and match and come up with some fresh ideas and some good opportunities for some young guys who may not have gotten it before.
Mm. I apologize if I'm repeating any questions. Please let me know. What'd you think of All In?
I liked part of it, and I didn't care for other parts of it.
We know what part you probably didn't like, because most of us didn't like that part. I think we know what you're talking about.
It's kind of two shows in one. But I love the crowd, and I love the energy behind it. I love Cody's victory over Aldis. I thought that match was brilliant, and a lot of the rest of it I could have lived without.
Well, real quick, speaking of Cody, Kevin, what have you made of the last, let's say, 18 months of Cody Rhodes and kind of this, I don't want to go as far as to say transformation, but just kind of the rise of this man as a presence outside of what folks knew of him in the WWE? What have you made of, his kind of ascension over the past couple of years?
It's growth, it's maturity, it's opportunity. It took him a while to sort of, he kind of, when he left WWE, he didn't just come out and hit the streets, flailing around. He had an idea of what he wanted to do. And then it just took a little bit of time for him to sort of network and get the pieces in place to be able to put this infrastructure together so that he could move forward with his vision of what he wanted to do. And you've got to be patient, but you've got to also always be willing to do business anywhere in the world with sometimes the least likely people. Like, for example, the Conrad Thompson relationship has benefited Cody very well. Mm. And those two had never met before, didn't know of each other. And that was a great part of the success of All In, and the star cast and the entire weekend was kind of putting those two together. So yeah, when Cody's dad took over as booker from Jim Crockett Promotions right after Starrcade '83, it took him a little while to kind of get the pieces in place for the magical run that was the second half of '85 through '86 and '87.
Right.
So it takes a little bit of time to kind of get everything together so you can really turn loose with your vision.
I agree with you on that, because I remember just getting into wrestling as a fan. I remember '83 was a big year for Crockett, and then '84 seemed to kind of be it seemed like a transition year. Like Starrcade '84 is all right, top to bottom. not as good as 83 and certainly not as good as 85. And yeah, it takes time. It takes time for that kind of creative transition. I want to ask you a question quick about announcers, because obviously there's two pairs of announcers in New Japan. There's of course you and Don, and there's JR and Josh. Obviously two different kinds of announcers. And there's definitely a difference in how you watch a match based on who announces. For instance, and I want your thoughts on this because it kind of involves you in terms of how I watched the match. I'm going to take as an example last year's match at Kingdom between Kenny and Jericho. I didn't watch it. I wanted to watch it with you and Don, and I couldn't. I watched it when they re-aired it on Access with JR. And I love JR, of course. Who doesn't? JR and Josh.
Right.
And everybody, of course, thought it was the greatest match in sliced bread because they were looking forward to it and et cetera. And I think the feud has been fantastic going across, international zones and everything. It's been pretty awesome. But I got to be honest, and I love JR, and I don't really know Josh that well. The match was good, but not blow away good. And part of me thinks, and again, not to take anything away from anybody, JR made it sound like, and he did a good job, obviously. It made it sound like a 1999 Raw match. I don't know if it's because I'm used to listening to JR. I have a feeling that if I listened to you and Don do it, I think I would have approached it differently, or it would have processed in my head differently. I have not had a chance to watch the match with you announcing.
Well, it was.
What do you think? What do you think of that theory or that dichotomy?
Yeah, well, I think you've got a couple of things at play here. The first thing is that we're live in Tokyo Dome, sitting there with them 20 feet in front of us, in front of 40,000 people, and they called those matches very early in the morning in a studio in Los Angeles. You know what I mean? So you've got kind of this antiseptic atmosphere that they are calling their version of the match versus where we were. So we had an advantage. JR, you said it right. It sounded like a match that I have heard JR call before, because that is who JR is. That's the reason why he was hired. That's the reason why Access had him in place, because they want fans who know and like Jim Ross's voice to, instead of saying Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Ken Shamrock, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, any of those names, they want them to say Okada, Tanahashi, Kenny Shida, understand?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still his voice, so you're automatically going to go there and say, "Oh, I remember when he used to call this," et cetera, et cetera. So it's good and bad. It's definitely good and bad. I wish I had the cachet with the audience that Jim Ross does, but I don't, because he has a 20-year head start of being the number one guy in the industry. So all we can do is explain the story simply, and this is what we were talking about earlier, this being a great jumping on point for new fans. Explain the story, get as much backstory as we can in a condensed so that people can understand it without me throwing up on them and not feeling like they have to worry about, oh my God, 5 or 6 seasons that we've got to binge watch before we just even start with Wrestle Kingdom. Oh man, here, just start with the big one. And there we go. And I think going forward this year, you're going to hear more, as far as Access is concerned, they are taking the feed from New Japan World. So, we're going to see how this all goes, but it's going to start with Wrestle Kingdom, and then it's going to go from there. JR's contract is what it is, and I think eventually we'll probably have him for some big shows come over here in Japan. But what that's going to do is going to allow Access to kind of turn the tapes over quicker and get the shows on their air faster. Like, for example, Wrestle Kingdom this year airing same day. There'd be no way they could turn around and edit the show down to what they need it to be, and have it air the same day without taking the feed directly from New Japan World. and the partnership with TVSI and everything else, So
right.
That's how this is all going to work.
Interesting.
Real quick, one last thing for me on the announcing. It's kind of the theory of you didn't know you needed something until you had it. One of the more pleasant surprises for me this year, Kevin, was hearing Chris Charlton on the broadcast. And he's somebody who, I've followed his work, and he's certainly he's forgotten more about New Japan than I'll ever know. But what's it been like, adding Chris to the mix?
It's good. We have fun. I think it's I think people who are friends with him and familiar with his work will understand and appreciate Chris right away. But I think others, it might take a little getting used to. So I'm of the philosophy that we ease Chris into this and we not just go, oh, well, it's just Chris Charlton. We need to have him there and everybody understands who this is. No, we need to treat him special. And when he is with us, we will make a big deal of it because he is, his history knowledge makes him unique to any other broadcaster. So that's what we want to tap into. And we're very excited for that. But some people, it's like, who's that guy? Who's the guy with that accent? I can't understand a word he says. Well, you should try to listen to him because he's dishing out some good stuff. And then those people, it's like, oh, I love Chris. I've read his books. I'm a big fan. I follow him on Twitter. So depending on where you are, you know what I mean? It's just wrestling is comfort food, right? We want it to be easily digestible. And we want it to be everyone's decision that they are, they sort of welcome him on board as opposed to top down. This is what you're going to take. The reason why WWE struggles. This is what you're going to like. This is who we're going to push. And you're going to take it and like it. Instead, it's like, hey, man, it's okay. Chris is here for a little bit. Chris is here for a little bit. And then all of a sudden it becomes, I didn't know I needed it until I heard it. But then it becomes, I didn't know I wanted it until I didn't have it. You understand? That's what we want to get the audience to. That's where we want to take everybody to so that they're asking for it as opposed to us telling them that this is what they're going to get.
Yes, it very much feels like when WCW used to bring in Mike Tenay to talk about the cruiserweights.
Right.
Where it's like, this guy, we don't get this guy often, but when he's here, he's he adds something to the broadcast, and I'm glad he's here.
Exactly right. And when Tenay had to do TNA by himself with Don West, everybody pines for it nowadays. I love revisionist history. Weekly evisceration of the worst commentary team in history of Mike Tenay and Don West. And oh my God, they're putrid and horrible. And I want to throw my TV out the window.
Let's not forget Ed Ferrara on that desk.
I loved his enthusiasm. No, you didn't, you phony. You hated his guts when they did the weekly TNA show. And it's only because, we're prisoners of the moment and we're revisionist historians that we go back and say we loved what we used to hate.
Kevin, we're doing weekly, bi-weekly reviews of the old TNA pay-per-views, and I will tell you, I love me some Mike Tenay, and I'm okay with Don West, but there is nothing like sitting through Ed Ferrara's sexy jokes or bathroom humor to make you appreciate the professor more than you thought you would,
or needing to grab everybody's tits. Yeah, no.
It was those were some dark times, and think about how far we've come in the industry, because now, whether it's society, I'm not quite sure what it might be. You can't tell jokes like you used to be able to tell a few years ago. And some people go, oh, we used to be able to be funny and now we can't be funny. Well, you just have to clean up your act and not offend people now.
Kevin, these wouldn't have been funny in 2002.
Right? But now you've got to work with what we have in society nowadays, and everybody's become a lot more socially conscious, and that's fine. But what a difference in terms of wrestling. And it shows like that would not have flown now. And when you go back and you look at things like that, it's like, oh boy, what were we thinking? What were we doing? And that was the time. And so now this is the time.
What you're telling me is Okada's never going to wrestle for the Dup Cup? Come on. Who cares about the IWGP title? We want the Dup Cup.
Hey, give me that Dup Cup. There There were so many dubs that we never got to meet.
Speaking of Mr. Okada and the rest of that awesome gang, why don't we, unless anybody has any other questions, why don't we dive quick? We won't go match by match. It'll take too long. But why don't we peruse the big card on January 4th? January 4th. And to kind of get your thoughts, Kev, on what you think of some of these matchups. Here's the card at the moment. There is going to be a gauntlet match. We don't have anybody in the match yet to determine the number one contenders for the never open weight 6-man tag titles.
Look for some surprise teams to be involved. They're not doing the New Japan Rumble anymore, but I have a feeling there'll be some surprise tandems put together.
Liger,
Kevin, Rocky, and Don.
and a 58 and a 65-year-old Liger, or whatever. Yeah. All right, Kota Ibushi and Will Ospreay for the. Oh, Kev. By the way, tell me. See now, Steve. Now we have the true judge of whether or not I completely destroy any of these names. That's what people enjoy every week, Kev, on the show is whenever I totally murder a Japanese wrestler's name. But I'm doing better. Okay. I'm doing better. Kota Ibushi. What's that?
You got easy ones on this show.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I do. Kota Ibushi will defend the never open weight title against Will Ospreay. Suzuki Gun, Suzuki Gun, which is Yoshinobu Kanemaru and El Desperado, the champs, will take on Roppongi or Roppongi. Shut up, Steve.
It's my favorite part of the show.
3K and Los Ignorables de Japón. See, come on.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
In a three-way tag match for the IWGP heavyweight tag titles. All right, the rest of these are cake. Tomohiro Ishii will defend the British heavyweight title against Zack Sabre Jr., my guy. The Gorillas of Destiny will take on the other half of Los Ignorables de Japón. And, Young Bucks for the IWGP tag titles, a three-way. Cody will defend the U.S. title against Juice Robinson. Kushida will defend the IWGP Junior heavyweight title against Taiji Ishimori. Argument Mr. Okada taking on Jay White in a singles match. No belt on the line. Very rare for Okada to be in a match with no title. Chris Jericho defending the Intercontinental title against Tetsuya Naito. And in the main event, Mr. Omega defending the world title of the IWGP heavyweight title against Hiroshi Tanahashi. What specific match, Kev, jumps out at you as one that may, make history or be one of those ones that we'll see in the app down the line as one that the world has to see?
I don't want to say Ibushi versus Ospreay because I have a tendency to, it's like I fear what those guys are going to do. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of watching a match like that with one, kind of my eyes covered, but my fingers spread apart so I can see. I think, and then on the opposite side of that will be Jericho and Naito, which I think is going to be freaking brutal.
I think so too.
Jericho beat the snot out of Naito when they met in June. And now, it started right in front of us where Jericho hit Naito in the back as hard as I've ever heard a human being get hit. And it just continued from there. So I have a feeling that will be a very, very, very physical match. And I'm interested with Tanahashi and Omega because it's a generational clash of style and will, and Kenny wears his heart on his sleeve. And if you can take any inferences from anything that Kenny has said, you're probably pretty close to, the absolute truth. Kenny will tell you exactly what is on his mind, but so does Tanahashi, who cares not for Mr. Omega. And the opposite of the coin is true. Omega does not like Tanahashi at all. This is a very personal rivalry with guys who don't like each other, which is always good, because personal issues draw money historically in wrestling.
Yep.
And I don't think that people understand how much these two dislike one another. And that to me is what makes this matchup so intriguing. There's the whole card for me is stellar because there's a layer of something in every match. Ishii and Zack is going to be remarkable. There's just, the tag matches are, I think, especially in the junior heavyweight division, they've kind of set themselves up for Well, we saw one really good match that they had back at Power Struggle, and we know that they can do this. And now it's like, no, that was so good, we're going to do it again, but at Wrestle Kingdom, okay, let's see how they do. But I think
having
the
to
LIJ
follow Ibushi and Ospreay too.
depends on where it is on the card. That one might be first. If history is the indicator, the junior heavyweight tag title will open the show, and we'll see if that is the case. Same with Young Bucks and Evil and Sonata. I'm looking forward to it. But you've got Wrestle Kingdom debuts for Shingo Takagi and Taiji Ishimori. You have the singles match Dome debut for Zack Sabre Jr. You've got a rematch from 2 years ago with Cody and Juice, but both men are completely different than when they met the first time.
Yep.
And Okada, not for the title, and it's the first time in 6 years he's not in the mix for the belt, and I just can't wait to see what's going to happen there. There's no doubt what is the main event though this year, and if you look at they've wrapped the trains. I saw as I went out this morning, and and wrestle advertisements. It's Tanahashi and Omega that's selling the tickets.
Real quick, Kevin, you mentioned earlier in our conversation about Cody and the maturity and the reinvention and, continuing to expand his horizons as a performer. And I think nobody embodies that on this card, maybe in professional wrestling more than Chris Jericho, when you look at the width and breadth of his career. And I'm wondering, in terms of this New Japan run, what have you made of not only his performance, but also the way the New Japan audience has taken to him? What do you think he brings to the promotion?
At first, I wasn't quite sure, and that I was not sure how the Japanese audience was going to take to Chris, but there would be significant benefit for the North American audience and the global audience and beyond with Chris, because he is a household name in professional wrestling. But I think that with Naito, Naito kind of helps propel that, and everybody, all the fans last year knew Kenny, and it took him a little while to figure out, oh wait, this is Chris Jericho, right? I've seen him before. And WWE, to be fair, is not as big here as one might think. It airs on television, but not really. I mean, they do okay, but it's not anywhere near the business of New Japan. So I think Jericho has kind of now gotten on board with where it's not only has meaning across the board and around the world, but also it has meaning here in Japan. I mean, he had been here 20 years ago. The majority of the fans that were fans of Jericho back then have died off or don't pay attention anymore. And now it's a whole crop of new fans, young fans, a lot of women, a lot of kids at these shows. And Los Ingobernables de Japón is by far the number one merchandise seller. It seems like everybody is completely branded with LIJ every time you go to a show. So very, very interesting to see where it goes. But when Jericho describes himself as the GOAT, the greatest of all time, and you hear people that say that, and it's like, blah. But you know what? Jericho might have a claim to it. Because if you think about it, you think about everything that he's done, and he's nowhere near finished. You think about what he's done, you go, maybe he is.
Yeah.
Maybe he is the greatest of all time. Maybe we've been thinking about this wrong. And we need to reevaluate exactly what that, what that mantra, what that moniker would mean. So, yeah, you can't do much better than Chris Jericho.
Got a couple quick questions before we let you go, Kevin. I know you're very busy, and again, it's great to talk to you again. It's been a long time, and we hope you're not a stranger in your middle of your busy schedule. I'm going to give you some guys that are in the company right now. Give me a yes or a no, and then a quick little reason if you want whether these guys will ever go to WWE.
Okay.
The Bucks.
Yeah, I think they will. Of course, They would and they could. It's completely up to them. I think they are creating their own universe right now and will not need WWE. Will they go there someday? Maybe. It would be completely up to them. But I think more than likely we're going to see them doing their own thing and for quite some time.
I could see them going to WWE, not even to wrestle. I could see them going there saying, hey, we'd like to train. We'll help you merchandise T-shirts. I think they want to go in as businessmen, not even as superstars. That's my opinion. I don't even think they want to go there to wrestle. But
maybe in 10 years they could do that. There's nothing that says they couldn't. But their days of being active and traveling the world and having fun are not over yet.
Nope, I agree.
But, but they could become. Trust me, you want to have success in your business. You talk to successful people, so you find out what the best have done, and that would be talking to the Bucks.
Right. Cody, think he'll ever go back?
I do. Not right away, but I think again on his own terms, and certainly at a main event level, if he does go back, because he's becoming a household name all over the world. And, in terms of wrestling fans, crossover appeal with the appearances on Arrow, more stuff to come. I think that will continue to grow.
This is an interesting one because I'm 50-50 on it. Okada.
I'm 50-50 on it as well.
I love Okada. He might be my favorite guy in the whole company. To me, he's the Japanese Ric Flair. Because he just knows how to carry himself.
He just won another Match of the Year Tokyo Sports Award.
Yep.
Yesterday. I think that's his 5th in a row.
He just knows. He when I look at him, he's a Japanese Flair. Just by the way, and I've said this to Steve and Nate. He knows how to walk. Even just walking down the ramp, he gets it. The mannerisms, the look on his face, the way he looks at the crowd, whether he's a face or a heel is irrelevant. He gets it. I love Okada. I'd love to see him on this side of I love seeing him in New Japan, but I'd love to see him on this side of the world someday. But I don't know.
I don't know. Listen, when Shinsuke Nakamura left New Japan, everybody was like, "Oh, I can't believe it." Well, you know what he loves to do when he's not wrestling? He loves to surf. And surfing's a lot better in the U.S. than it is in Japan.
True.
And when Okada's not wrestling, he loves fishing. And a lot of good fishing in the U.S. So,
don't let Vince hear that. That'll be his gimmick.
He's the angler
with a surfboard.
He's the angler.
It looks like
the angler.
The angler.
We'll put him with Kurt. It'll be genius.
Team angler.
Team angler. All right, and the last one. I've always said no, but again. Who knows? Kenny.
I say no as well. I say hard no on that one.
Yeah, I just don't. My personal opinion, I just don't think he wants to deal with the day-to-day bullshit. Just from what I gather. You know him much better than I do. I'm just saying what I say.
He almost quit the business after leaving Deep South. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he always just put on my work hat for a bit. And you implied it when you were talking about the match with Tanahashi. He seems to just march to the beat of his own drum. He is his own guy. For better or for worse. You see. I used to watch more of the Being the Elite stuff. I'm good with my video games. I'm good with hanging out with the people that I enjoy. And he's very happy in Japan. He's been very happy living there for how many years at this point.
Right. And I think if he was, if he had his way, he would create his own universe, and he will do that, I think, going forward. You look at the year that he's had in New Japan, very un-New Japan-like story being told with reuniting of the Golden Lovers.
Right.
That's all Kenny. So if Kenny gets the creative satisfaction that he's looking for, that's what he's going to seek. And I don't see WWE saying, okay, we're going to completely rework our entire business model and give you everything that you need to be able to do what you want with no restriction and no editing.
And if you have a person who is that creative and they're not allowed to scratch that itch, you're going to have a person who's very unhappy very quickly.
Right.
He'll be another Punk.
And look at Ibushi. Ibushi, they rolled out dump trucks full of cash for him on a couple of occasions, and he said no because he's not motivated by money. So how do you reach when you have that? All they can offer is money, and they can offer more money than anybody else. But if that's not your motivator, then what can they offer you?
At best, I could see a lot of these guys Kenny's 35, so I could see him maybe going another 5 years till he's 40, maybe longer, maybe less. I guess it depends on the way the wind blows. I could see a lot of these guys maybe eventually training, maybe they want to live a cushy life in Tampa and go to Full Sail and just deal with that and not have to deal with the Raw SmackDown bullshit. You never know. A lot of guys think that. I think that's one reason I think NXT is so valuable to WWE, and they don't really. I think Triple H knows that, but I don't know if Vince totally knows that. But that's another topic for another day. Before we let you go, Kev, we're going to talk in the B block a couple of classic match picks pertaining to the late Dynamite Kid. We all know that his career and his life was a little sketchy at times. What are your thoughts? Again, he had a legend in New Japan. I have the second match that we're talking about tonight on right now. What kind of legacy did he leave in Japan and in wrestling in general?
It was certainly a pioneering of a style. Tiger Mask would not have been Tiger Mask if he didn't have Dynamite to play off of. And the big physical, strong junior heavyweight with the smaller, high-flying, high-risk Tiger Mask. You had to have that. He earned the respect of the fans, though it wasn't the traditional foreigner is heel matchup between those two. Mm-hmm. He earned respect from the fans. It was the bridge in the connectivity and the connective tissue between the British wrestling scene as it was through that era with Billy Robinson, et cetera, and then through the Calgary connection as well, because Stu and Inoki always had a great relationship. It just became he's part of the fabric of the company. He's one of the most important figures ever in New Japan history. And it's sad that his life was so consumed by everything having to do with this industry, and that was never able to figure out a way to deal with some of the issues, personality and otherwise, that affected him in his outside the ring life.
He was one of the first. His autobiography was one of the first wrestling books I ever read, just because he was one of my favorites as a kid. And why? There's something that just popped in my head now. Like, why do you think his, the tragedy of his story didn't resonate so much with wrestlers who used him as a model? And obviously Chris Benoit is one that comes to mind, but there are a lot of people who had him as like a role model who knew about that path that he took. Was it just that, like, hey, we're wrestlers, we're indestructible? And obviously we don't know the answer to this. I'm just speculating.
I would think that there's probably some of that, since they really didn't know. You remember the episode of the Brady Bunch when Bobby wrote the report about Jesse James, and he had to be told by somebody whose grandfather was killed by Jesse James exactly how bad Jesse James was. I don't think you know the good of Dynamite Kid because you get to see it. You don't know the bad of Dynamite Kid, and you don't know the backstory, and you don't know the other reasons why the tragedy became. And we may not want to pattern ourselves after this guy, because there was almost like a borderline suicidal. It was almost like a death wish for me every time he wrestled. The way he would just throw himself. WrestleMania 2, where he throws himself basically on his head, and nobody sees it. You know what I mean? It just seemed like that was what he wanted to do, and that was the way he wanted to go out. And and the legacy of him is, oh my God, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And instead of being, wow, maybe we really need to do some, psychological evaluation of these people, we let them out there and put them in the ring. Because what is it that they really are trying to accomplish here? Are they trying to be the best wrestler in the world, or are they trying to kill themselves in a very public way, blaze of glory type of thing? I don't know. That to me, that's my speculation on it. We can learn the good and the bad, and everybody just seems to remember the good and they forget the bad. And that's why what do we always say? We are doomed to repeat history because we refuse to learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kevin, if you need any psychological evaluations for the talent out there, and you want to, bring me out to Japan, I would be more than happy to come and sit down with everybody. I'll need a translator.
You wouldn't even know where once you start unpeeling these onions, there are a lot of messed up people in this business. Think about it, right? We love wrestling. We all do. You've got to have a complete screw loose to want to do this to your bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what made them? Where did it all go so wrong? That's where you come in, Steve. So good luck.
Now I'm imagining like a Dr. Katz sitcom starring Steve Willie, where he's the wrestling psychiatrist.
And the thing of it is like, some of the, because everybody carnying it up, and they're never going to let you in. If they start to let you in, man, oh man, you are going to find some messed up people.
Well, you just pretty much talked about my day up until talking to you, Kevin.
Right.
So tell me, Kenny, when you power bombed Okada, who were you really angry at?
Right. It's like a prison psychiatrist, right? Are you here because you're really messed up, or are you here because you just are trying to get out of your cell block and you want your own cell in the psych? Like, what is the angle? What's the angle you're trying to work here?
I think we stumbled onto something, Steve.
I think so.
Yes. Kevin Kelly, you are awesome. And it's
Thank
always
you.
a pleasure. It's been so long that I've been able to talk to you straight through without being interrupted with, cat jokes and Oreo jokes and you being pasty and all the other silly, dopey nonsense. It's nice to be able to actually have you start. You already dealt with that about 2 hours ago. So.
Yeah, I know. By the way, it's amazing to me how many people have, if I've done like an autograph session, or if I've done, somewhere, like if I'm at PWX in Charlotte, for example, this happened on 2 different occasions. 2 different people came up to me on 2 different times and said, "Oh my God, I used to love listening to you on Place to Be Nation with Jaron Scott. You guys talking about all those old Raws and all that stuff." That was like really cool. And it happened 2 different times, 2 different shows.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
And I think Juice even said that he listened to it. So, or
what? Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Somebody listened to it. One of my contemporaries here listened to it and remarked how they us, going back in time and doing those look backs.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. That actually made me smile. There you go, Steve. I've been cured of whatever made my day suck. So there you go.
Right? And by the way, everybody has stolen what we did. And now has done. That's what they've done to make their money. And so you guys were first. So hooray and huzzah to Place to Be Nation.
Well, thank you, Kev. And you're always welcome back. Kevin
the
Kelly,
Little Richard of wrestling podcasts. And it's a lot of Pat Boones running around on these streets.
And now
the kids at home, they just like, what? Who? Go Google it, kids. Trust me.
And now Nate's gonna get his hair like Little Richard. Kevin Kelly, everybody, the voice of New Japan. It's weird not saying the voice of Ring of Honor because we used to say that all the time. So you can hear him on the New Japan Pro Wrestling World app and elsewhere. January 4th, Wrestle Kingdom 13 pay-per-view, and and on the New Japan World app. So they're going to try and do it same day on Access too?
And
like
also,
later in the day?
Fans will be able to, if you're a Fight TV fan, you can order it via Fight TV. And you'll also be able to see matches from Wrestle Kingdom 13 same day on Access TV. We've got all our bases covered this year with the big event on January 4th in Tokyo Dome.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. Kevin Kelly, you're awesome. Please, if you can cut another sliver of time in your life, please come back. Always a pleasure. Maybe sometime in the spring, but we'll talk. Our people, I don't have any people. There's nobody here that Steve will talk to you.
It's middle of the day here, by God, and I've got things to do.
All right, we're gonna let you go. Kevin Kelly, everybody, the voice of New Japan Pro Wrestling. When we return here on Main Event, we are going to continue talking New Japan. But we're going to go back to the early '80s and honor the late Dynamite Kid with a pair of matches against the guy that Kevin mentioned just a moment ago. For the Nate, for the Steve, I am Scott. He is KK. Back after this.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
PlayStation Nation's Justin Rosero and Chad Kimball here, and we want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we now offer them to you on 2 great feeds. On the PlayStation Wrestling feed, we bring you The Mothership, the place to be podcast, Main Event, Survey Says, Wrestling Warzone, a Monday Night Wars podcast retrospective, No Holds Barred, Jeff Learns Wrestling, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows. On top of that, we're also dipping into the vault, re-releasing the entire catalog of where the big boys play for your enjoyment. In addition to these full-length shows, we also deliver special network pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is loaded with great content, offering such tremendous shows covering the land of pop culture, such as Geek and Sassy, Talkin' Pop, the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Sunday Groove, PTBN Play, Freak Out Drive-In, Songs with Friends, Looking Forward, Looking Back, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with the hard-traveling fanboys, Sellers Points, Conversation Comics, DC Post-Crisis Management, Marvel Age, and Marvel Age Masterclass, plus weekly pod blasts that cover the gamut of comic topics. The feed is also filled with insightful sports content, including the NBA team, This Week in the NFL, and more.
And you can find all these current shows, plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others available at PlayStation.com. We cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, in-depth stretch projects, and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlayStation.com/Amazon while doing your online shopping. And download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlayStation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
I came to dance, 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 dance. I hit the floor cause that's my plans, 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 plans. I'm wearing all my favorite brands, 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 brands. Give me some space for both my hands.
We are back
hands,
on PlayStation Nation Main Event, episode 116. Joe Cool himself, Joe Montana. Did you guys go over a bunch of 16s?
No, we didn't. We didn't have time for all of that preamble and tomfoolery when you got stars on the line.
That's true. That is true. Preambling. I like that. I think if we ever do a barbershop window show store, Steve, I think we should do a shirt with Nate in the Little Richard hair saying preambling. I think be a major seller.
I mean, I'm glad Kevin brought up that point though in the A block, because that is a salient point by the great Kevin Kelly that there's and I'm not taking food off anybody's table. I think there's enough room at the table for all of us to eat, but just know who set the table.
That's right.
That's all I will say.
That is true.
As Bill Parcells would say, we bought the groceries and set the table.
And set the table. Exactly. PlayStationNation.com, your home for everything pop culture. Check out all the great other podcasts and writing as we head into the Christmas season. Of course, get your GWWE greatest tag teams of all time list in, because come New Year's Eve, we'll start tabulating. And of course, guys, we will do our top 100 lists in special episodes of Main Event throughout the winter. So everybody look forward to that. We had a good time. Nate and I did last year when we did our top 100 singles wrestlers. And Steve, it's great to have you with us to put your tag team list in as well. So look forward to that in 2019. But get your ballot in, and so we can tabulate and do our fan composite list on PlaySpeedNation.com. Also, as the college football season, regular season ends and the bowls begin, Mr. Logan Carlson and I just did our final campus hot takes. We talked about the surprises, disappointments in college football this year, and of course got you ready for bowl season, which starts this weekend. And of course, we'll conclude on January 7th with the likely matchup of Alabama and Clemson, although I hope my beloved Irish will throw a wrench into that mix, and we will we'll get that going. Hot stove too. We're talking about that on our message board, PlaySpeedNation.proboards.com. We're talking a lot of hot stove. What do you think? What do you think, Steve? Well, Chris Bryant to the. I'll give you Thor. I don't want to give the Yankees Thor. You can have Thor if I can have Chris Bryant. What do you think?
I don't think they're ready to get rid of Bryant just yet.
I know. But I got to give my man Brody a lot of credit. Brody wants to be your boy. He wants to be the next Theo. So we'll see if he can do that. Anyway, so check out Mr. Logan Crosland's and my final campus hot takes, a column of the season, as we, again, did surprises, disappointments. We bagged on Mark Richt's shitty season for Miami. And they're going to be playing 45 minutes away from me right now at not right now, but later on in the month at Yankee Stadium. They're in the New Era Pinstripe Bowl. They're playing Wisconsin. Your favorite team, Steve? Wisconsin. The Badgers.
Job to
Have you been to Camp
Marquette.
Randall? Is it a nice ball? Is it a nice stadium?
I have been there to see you too. I have not been there to see the Badgers, because why would I want to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, all right. So PlaySpeedNation.com, your home for everything pop culture. All right, so as we mentioned in the A block and last week, it was my turn to have the baton for the New Japan Classic match picks. And, of course, as Nate did earlier in the year to honor Vader, I wanted to honor the loss of the great Dynamite Kid with a couple of Dynamite Kid matches. Now, I had already picked a Dynamite Kid match for a past turn with the baton. We did the February 5th, 1980 match between him and Tatsumi Fujinami for the, I think it was for the, what the hell was it for? I think it was for the, was it the junior heavyweight? Yeah, it was for the WWF junior heavyweight title, February 5th, 1980. I was trying to find another match between them, but I guess they never wrestled again, or maybe those matches are not on New Japan World. But I did grab two matches between the Kid and clearly, of course, the guy with which he pretty much made the decade in New Japan. And Kevin mentioned him in the A block, and that is, of course, Tiger Mask. And I found two Tiger Mask matches. As a matter of fact, only one number flip-flops the dates. They're almost symmetrical except for one number. Two matches I picked. The first one from April 23rd, 1981, the Big Fight Series from the Kokugikan. I like saying that fast. I don't even care if I say it wrong. Kokugikan. And then 2 years later, we're flip-flopping only one number. We go from April 23rd, 1981 to April 21st, 1983 between Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid. That one, let me take a look at just so I can get this right. That one was also, that was Big Fight Series 2, also at the Kokugikan. So neither of them were for titles, actually. There are matches when Tiger Mask was the junior heavyweight champion. They actually wrestled at the Garden in August of '82. So if you go to New Japan, the New Japan World app, there's a shit ton of great Tiger Mask matches, and there is even more with Dynamite Kid. But I wanted to pick these two in particular because they were kind of far apart in time. So I was curious to see if they were different. Let's talk about the first one. Again, the date was April 23rd, 1981 at the Kokugikan between Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid. Tiger Mask obviously had a great reputation. Kid was the gaijin. Is that the term for someone that's not gaijin? He was the gaijin. and a big heel. He was, giving the finger and telling them all to fuck off and everything. Typical Rathscalian British guy. The one thing I gathered from that match, which was kind of a quickie, it was only, I think the whole clip on the app was 12:09. It almost seemed like a squash. Like Tiger Mask beat the shit out of him and beat him with a not a schoolboy, but like a back suplex and got the pin. I was actually kind of shocked at that. Nate, what were your thoughts going in on what kind of match we thought we'd see early in the decade, one of their first matches? What were you expecting?
It's funny because I might be, considering our audience, I might be one of the few people who was more familiar with Tiger Mask than I was with Dynamite Kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was always drawn to the Japanese workers, and just going back and watching a lot of Tiger Mask, you can see the DNA, you can see the blueprint for what would become the cruiserweights that we knew and loved, in the Nitro era. And we see that evolution even to the day. So Dynamite was somebody that I knew was a good worker, but I primarily knew him as Bulldog's partner. And so to see him in his prime and to see him in this era, I was expecting the WWE guy. And, in these two matches, to me, and this is not to take anything away from the tag team, but I thought this was kind of the pure, unadulterated, unaltered, undistilled form of Dynamite Kid.
Yeah, what do you think, Steve? Early on in the decade, we talked about the match with him when we did it earlier in the year, when we talked about the match with him and Fujinami. Fujinami, obviously a little more experienced. Tiger Mask, I didn't know a lot about him myself, so I was expecting stiff, but I wasn't sure what to expect between going from Fujinami to Tiger Mask. I don't know what you thought about going from one type of opponent to another for Kid.
Tiger Mask feud is historical in that, there was a match in historic in that there was a match in WWF. It spilled over to New York. And so that is how a lot of people older, first saw Dynamite Kid. I was more familiar with him just because the Bulldogs were one of my favorite tag teams growing up. So I had gone back and knowing back when Chris Benoit it was okay to watch Chris Benoit, knowing that Dynamite was one of his idols. So I was able to, like I talked with Kevin, I had Dynamite's autobiography. I was able to go back and watch a couple of the matches. I might have seen one of these, but I can't recall. I know I saw the Fujinami match before. So I was expecting for this first match, I was surprised when it was only about 10 minutes long, and I was expecting more just really fast-paced, lot of dives, because that's what the feud was known for. And we got a little bit of that. I was surprised how green Tiger Mask seemed. There were a lot of struggles with a couple moves, completely missing some altogether. I think there was a drop kick that, you could see the spacing between the two of them. So that was kind of surprising knowing how famous of a wrestler Tiger Mask is and how famous of a feud this is, and especially knowing how stiff Dynamite Kid can be, to kind of see a little bit of sloppiness in the match.
You think they were going too fast? Maybe that's why. They almost overpaced it. It's funny you say that, Steve, because I actually almost felt that way for that first match. I felt like they were almost going too fast, and they weren't letting the moves happen. They were kind of too busy too busy going to the next move. They didn't let the move before that finish. You know what I'm saying? I felt like that's actually a great point, Steve. I kind of felt that too, actually. What'd you think, Nate? I feel like that they were almost going too fast at points in that first match.
I think, just kind of reading up on this particular match, because I did want to get some of the backstory on this. I guess this would have been, just kind of a spotlight match. Not that Dynamite Kid was a job guy, but to me, the focus of this match seemed to be to spotlight Tiger Mask and to really get him over with this audience. And so it makes sense that Tiger Mask would be a guy that would be pushing the pace, would be a guy that would be getting a lot of the cool offensive spots in this particular match. It did go by quicker than I thought because I thought both of these matches at minimum would be, 15, 60 minutes. And so for the match to go that quickly, it ended sooner than I thought. But I didn't have that much of a problem with it because it felt very much like this is the appetizer. We're not going to give you the full main course here because there's a lot more story to tell with these two guys. So we're going to give you, we're not going to give you a Flair Steamboat Broadway on the first night of this show, but we're going to give you, a good coming attractions, and Steve and I alluded to the crossover on the CW, and no spoilers here if you haven't seen it, but it is in and of itself, it's good, but it's setting up something that's even better to come. And I thought that's what this match was. It was, these two guys are good, but they're going to get great. And, we just want to give you a little piece of that right now.
You know what that kind of reminds me of? I like that thinking, Nate, because you know what it reminds me of? AJ and Knock at Mania.
Yep.
Take away the match they had in New Japan 2 years earlier. This was, again, it was just good enough to be entertained, but we knew that they were, they were on the Autobahn, but they were only going 60, not 90. They'll get to 90 eventually. That's a good point. What do you think of that, Steve? That maybe they kind of put the pedal maybe 1/2 speed, knowing that more was to come.
Well,
maybe that's why they were feeling their way out.
I think
maybe that's why there were some misses.
And my guess is that this match was early in the card, just based on the time. A lot of the New Japan matches, they kind of increase, where you'll get a lot of 15 to 20-minute matches in the middle. You usually get a half-hour one at the end. And, like we said, this is like 9, 10. It's almost a preliminary match. And if they are trying to put over the character of Tiger Mask, who, again, is fairly new at this point, and this was possibly their first match. Based on the New Japan World app, it was the first match. Based upon some of the other research I've done, it's the first match that I see shown. So, they could just be getting that part over and, establishing a feud. I made a note at the end that this would have been a really solid Nitro match in the late 90s. Like a nice solid 10 minutes. And that's also credit to it as far as how ahead of its time it was. You hear that all the time with this feud, but this one is not the one 2 years from now, which is a legit main event match. A lot of the moves even that you would see would have been something you saw on the end of Nitros. You would see, a couple of dives, a couple of big time suplexes and some mat work as you go to commercial. You wouldn't see a ref shirt that was stained with blood. That was something interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they definitely knew how to tell the story, particularly going outside. I mean, they went outside the ring quickly. This match was probably 9 minutes, maybe. Again, the whole clip on the app was 12:09, but there was intros and outros, so it was probably like maybe 9.5 minutes. Not long, a sprint.
Yeah, and this Scotty, this was the debut of the character of Tiger Mask.
Ah, okay.
And so knowing that, it does kind of feed into the fact that this match was a little bit more abbreviated because we're just going to give you an introduction to this new character in our universe,
which is a huge reason why the Kid, put him over clean, to put the character over. We didn't have a mess. So, makes perfect sense now.
Is the character of Tiger Mask similar to the character of Mark Madden?
well, Tiger Mask could at least fit in the tights.
Tiger Mask is a lot less creepy, shall we say, than the character of Mark Madden.
And you wouldn't have to wear a muumuu.
Yeah, those are some big time callbacks right there.
Yeah. So Tiger Mask gets the win in the first meeting. All right, so let's.
Both of these matches feel like And I know you had made the allusion to a late 90s Nitro match. To me, this feels almost like the New Japan version of what would be the Sting Muta feud. With guys that are a little bit smaller than Sting and Muta.
I could jump on that.
It feels like you've got the one guy, who is more athleticism and power, and then you got the other guy who is breaking out moves that this audience hadn't really seen before.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I agree. And like I said, these guys would. Now I'm going by Mr. Lariato and that Google sheet that's gone around. So from this match, any final thoughts on the match, Steve? Before we go to the next one, I don't want to cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just that I was excited to see what the difference would be between a 1981 match between the two and one almost, like you said, exactly 2 years later for a title.
Exactly. Nate, any final thoughts on the first match?
Yeah, I just thought it was a really good introduction to the feud. And I think if you're one of the listeners out there and you've heard about this feud, but you haven't watched any of the matches yet, this is the perfect place to start. Not only because it's the beginning, but because I think for a modern audience, it's probably the most accessible rather than trying to watch, some 19, 20, 25-minute classic where you might not have all the history and the backstory.
Right. Now, there's a ton of Tiger Mask matches on the app. Looking ahead between now and our next match, he has matches with Viano 3, Scorpion. I may have to throw on this match. Him and Fujinami as a tag team. Holy fucking shit. Against El Solar and El Solitario. Then he wrestles El Solar in a singles match. He takes on, these are all in 1981, Gran Hamada, El Canek, crossing over obviously to the Mexican wrestling. He wrestles Kid on New Year's Day 1982. Wrestles him again later in January in 82. That's for the junior heavyweight title. Actually, the first match, New Year's Day of 82 at Korakuen Hall, was for the WWF junior heavyweight title. It was the tournament, and Tiger Mask won. He fought Kid later in the month. Steve Wright, Black Tiger. He's a big feud with Black Tiger. Faces Kid twice in 82, once in July, once in August. And that takes us to this match, our second match involving these two this week. The date is, as I mentioned, April 21st, 1983. Big Fight Series 2 from the Kyoramamai Kogu Gikan. Kevin's going to fucking kill me. I don't even know. I mean, I said it phonetically. I don't know. Are there any hidden letters? Kogu Gikan. Is it Kogu? Or am I supposed to be Kogu Gaikan? Am I supposed to say it like that? Instead of Gikan, Kogu.
Just Kogu. Let you sink or swim.
Kogu Gaikan. Oh, it's too late now, Steve. I don't even have a boat for these fucking names. My raft has so many holes in it. Anyway. Shoot ahead 2 years. Obviously, both guys, much more experienced. Kid grew his hair out a little bit. He's wearing a singlet instead of just the regular pant tights. You said it was for a title. I don't see one on the... Is it for a title? Did Tiger Mask have a belt on?
It was for the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Championship.
Oh,
and what had happened is that, and I believe this was likely storyline, that Dynamite Kid injured Tiger Mask. And so there was the NWA title and the WWF Junior title was involved with that. Both of the belts were held up, and this was a match to determine the champion.
Okay. I'm going to say Kogu Gaikan from now on. I think it sounds better. All right. So I wanted a match that was a couple of years past. I didn't want to go too close to their first meeting. I wanted to see if we can have a match that was considerably different. This match, much longer. The total clip on the app was 26:49. So this one much longer. And going in, Nate, I think it was pretty clear that the chemistry was definitely there. I mean, this was, I think, as I said, this is probably their fifth match just on the app. I mean, I'm sure at this point, after 2 years, they probably wrestled 200 times or something. What were you thinking going in as to what we were going to expect and how different it was going to be from the first one?
Yeah, I figured this match would be a lot more of what the series would come to be known as. A lot more of the backstory, a lot more of the history. And when you have people that interact so frequently, whether you're talking about Kid and Mask, whether you're talking about Steamboat and Flair, whether you're talking about a Sting and Flair, there are certain things that, when you got two great dance partners, the chemistry is just evident. And so I was expecting everything we saw from the first match, plus a lot more psychology, plus a lot more brutality, to be honest, knowing what Dynamite Kid is all about.
What do you think, Steve, going in? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was expecting a brawl is what it was like after 2 years and not knowing the back. I was looking at the background as I was watching the match. And you see the start of Tiger Mask is kind of getting ready to go. Dynamite Kid is trying to get the crowd involved and looks super sleazy. You mentioned the long hair, but there's also that was barely there mustache that made him just look creepy.
It did.
It's all get out. So I was ready to go to the match. It was a huge kick right off the bat. So they did get that spin kick over that Tiger Mask does. They flew into the outside the ring, and it's like, holy cow, this is going to be a fast-paced match. I think it was going to be like the 9-minute match we saw, only 20 minutes, and then Dynamite Kid slapped on a chin hold. Like, okay, this match is going to go a while.
Yes. Yep. I definitely think, and we talked about pacing in the first match. I definitely think we were going to see a lot more storytelling. So I do think that it was going to. I think they were definitely going to be a little more snug with each other, and they definitely were, because we saw 5 spike pile drivers in this match, 2 of them on the floor. So we knew that stiff-wise, these two obviously are a lot more snug with each other than they were 2 years earlier. However, I think the pacing was going to be very different. Obviously, the first match, 9-minute sprint, Nate. But now here, more story told, more at stake, and things are going to be a little different.
Yeah, and I think because you have that history, you're allowed to tell a better story. Because like I said, the first match that we watched this week was all about establishing Tiger Mask. It was much less about these two rivals. And now when we get to this point in 83, it's about, this is a storied history between these two teams. It's Yanks and Sox, as Michael Wilbon would say. It's a classic rivalry. And so I enjoyed it. It's funny because, again, reading up on this rivalry this week, I believe this is the final singles match the two would have. And so I'm wondering, in that context, Scotty, do you feel like this was a fitting into the rivalry, or knowing that this is the last time they'll face off one-on-one, was there anything that you felt was left to be desired with the match?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, they took it to the floor. Obviously, this match, you could tell the first match in 81 was not a big hoopla. It was almost like the second match of a house show kind of thing. This match, obviously, the streamers, and it was much more decorated, much more ceremonial. So you knew that they were going to stretch the stage, and that's why they went out to the floor, and they throwing themselves into the. Tiger Mask kept kicking Kid in the fucking ribs when he was sitting up on the railing. Do you believe now, Steve? You said it in the first. You made the comment in the first match, so I'll go to you on this one. With it now, with the experience and the chemistry between the two, and now obviously pacing different because they got to go a little longer. Were you? Did you feel better about the fact that the moves were a little tighter? They were a little more snug as compared to the kind of misses in the first one?
Yeah, I'm not looking for some sort of massive stiff fest, or that could be fun once in a while.
Sure.
Just you want it to look at least somewhat believable.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely. And if there is a miss, that they cover for it. I remember I think it was this match where it looked like there was going to be a mistake on an arm drag, and it just covered for it well. And that, as you get more comfortable with someone and you do matches with each other, that's what makes people click, and that's what makes the matches look so great. So yeah, I did, and I thought Tiger Mask did a great job of showing off different style moves for those who think that Rey Mysterio was invented. Like you basically saw a 619 in the match to do a block on a dive after Dynamite Kid went away. You know, gosh, how many years before Rey did it? 20? More than 20?
More than 20.
Yeah, so it was, I thought it was a lot more snugly worked. And when you see the hatred starting to build between the two of them, you know it's going to look, that needs to happen in order to make it look better. If they're missing drop kicks on each other, it doesn't get across that pure hatred.
Yeah. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Dynamite Kid's facials in this match and kind of the growing frustration that he displays in the match. I thought, you know, granted, there's a lot more time to tell a story when you're hitting 20 minutes versus the time that they got in the first match, but just the story of his growing frustration at not being able to put away Tiger Mask, I thought that was a great job that Dynamite Kid did in terms of getting the story and the psychology across.
Definitely, and like I said, they stretch the stage out, and we're getting kicks to the ribs and fuck this shit. They're just gonna pummel each other to death. Kid seemed very comfortable. I mean, look, other than I'm not sure what, I feel like he was mostly a heel during most of his runs anywhere else. Obviously, babyface, you know, during the time with Davey Boy and WWF and the Bulldogs. But he seemed very comfortable in that nasty British son of a bitch role that guys like Regal would enjoy later on in his career, and I'm sure Billy Robbins, even like Dave Taylor and, you know, those guys like that. A lot of those like Westerners that come over aren't totally comfortable in that style. They kind of, you know, particularly if you're a babyface elsewhere. But Steve, it seemed like Dynamite was pretty comfortable being the douche. I don't know. Oh, yeah. Like Kevin said, I don't know if that's something. I don't know if that's just bad wiring or, but he embraced it, and I think that's a big plus for the feud.
Well, and what a lot of Gaijin did, especially back in those days, that scary guys, you think of, you know, Stan Hansen or Vader are the ones that come to mind. And Dynamite showing that you can do that as a dad, you can still come across as an arrogant, tough guy who, you know, is disrespecting the audience, is disrespecting their favorites, the guys who they're clearly trying to get over as, you know, big faces, and get that heat. So you want to see, you know, the good guy kick the bad guy's butt. And you see it in this match, like when Dynamite went for a tombstone in the match, the crowd was audibly gasping like, no, no, no. And Tiger got out of it. And then when he did end up hitting it, there were, you know, a lot of screams when it hit.
Right.
Also, what do you think about what happened when you get a really good move over in itself?
And it's done like 5 times as they passed it off on each other. What do you think about that, Nate? About just the way that Kid embraced the hatred to really push this feud forward and make this match as good as it was?
I mean, obviously, you know, you made the Rey Mysterio comparison for Tiger Mask, and the natural comparison here from a contemporary standpoint is Chris Benoit when you're talking about Dynamite Kid. And so, and matter of fact, I think it'd be really interesting to watch this match and then go and watch a Rey Benoit match afterwards and see what the similarities and differences would be between those two matches. But I think what made Kid stand apart was that you had somebody that could work with these quote unquote cruiserweights or junior heavyweights, and he could keep up the pace with them, but he also could ground things and make it more visceral and bring that brutality into the picture. And so I thought these two made for great foils, because it was like you have here's another comparison I'll throw out there. It's like Bruce Lee fighting Chuck Norris. Where they're both doing the same sport, but they're going about it in different ways, where one is more fluid and has flashier moves, and the other guy is a little bit more grounded with his take on the style. And so I thought these two were a perfect match for each other.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that confused me, and maybe it's because I had it on mute, so Steve, Nate, help me out. I wasn't sure how the ending went. It seemed like there was some confusion at the end. So help me out here and help the listeners out. Steve, how did we get to the, what was the climax?
Because it took a while for me to figure out.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the heck happened, and again, I had it on mute, so I wasn't sure. But
the bell rang several times during the match. The first time it rang was when it spilled out. There was a crossbody, and it went over the railing and into the crowd, and the bell rang.
Right.
And the ref ended up restarting the match once they got into the ring. Essentially, they called it a draw, but said, "Hey, you can keep going." I'm trying to see where the second time that happened as well, because one time it seemed very odd. It was when Dynamite hit a tombstone. Tiger Mask rolled into the ropes, and Dynamite Kid was trying to rip his mask off, and the bell rang again, even though it didn't seem like the ref went for it. So then they started shouting for one more. Dynamite Kid saying, "One more time, let's do it again." Did they do it a third and a fourth time, Nate?
I feel like at least a third.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually they went to the floor and exchanged the tombstones.
Yep. Which was sick.
and
they were definitely not. They didn't protect. I mean, they had cushion. Obviously they had padding, but
yeah,
they were a little ugly.
And Dynamite brought in what seemed to be like a piece of metal that he broke, or I thought it was a bottle at first, but it was clearly metal, and he was looked like he was going to cut open Tiger Mask, and eventually that was the fourth time. They were. I had to turn the page over because there were so many times that the bell rang. It was the tombstone on the floor after they got double counted out. That was the fourth time the bell rang. The third time was when they were both just going at each other and the ref was getting involved.
And then Kid headbutt the ref.
Yeah, and the ref basically no-sold it.
Yeah, pretty much. But that guy had a fucking head like a coconut.
Yeah, that was a big dude.
Holy shit. And then at one point, Kid's nose is bleeding. I'm sure it was probably from the headbutt. Mm-hmm. But so yeah, a little chaos at the end there, but wow. Yeah, they definitely went all out. Now, was it their best match? Well, you'll have to take a look and see that. Again, they wrestled at least, well, based on the catalog of matches here, that I think they wrestled at least 6 times. Couple times in 82. I know they wrestled as late as 85.
And then there's an 830-82 match that was at Madison Square Garden.
Yes. Yep. I'm pretty sure they wrestled in 80. I thought they did. No, maybe not. No, because 85, Dynamite's in WWF by then.
Yeah. And Meltzer gave this match 5 stars.
Did he?
I don't think I would have gone that high.
I don't think I would have gone that high either. I think that's the last match between the two. Yeah, because I'm into 84, and
that's their last singles match. They do meet again in 96.
Seriously?
In the Michinoku Pro match.
Michinoku Pro, yep.
Yeah,
in a 6-man tag.
Yeah, I forgot the Tiger Mask.
Is that on here, you think?
It was
that Dynamite was in there.
It was a Tiger Mask, Great Sasuke, and Mil Mascaras versus Dynamite Kid, Kobayashi, and Dos Caras.
Mm-hmm. And Dynamite Kid is.
Is that on here? Is it on the app or no?
No.
Probably have to find it, huh? Yeah.
I'm sure it's on Daily Motion or one of these sites. If you can, I don't know where Michinoku Pro host their videos these days.
Yeah, I know.
Somebody call Taka.
Anyway, so you wouldn't give it 5 stars, Steve? Maybe 4?
Yeah, like 4.25.
4.25. What do you think, Nate?
4, somewhere around there.
I mean, it's interesting because I think if I'm looking with 2018 eyes, yeah, it's a 4-star match, maybe 4.5 stars. But by the standards of the time, and if I'm somebody like a Dave Meltzer who is watching this match in 1983 and comparing it to the North American scene, I could easily see why this would be a 5-star match.
Yeah, I agree. I can see why people would think that as well. Yep. So there you go, folks. So check those matches out. Again, the dates, April 23rd, 1981, and then just flip the numbers. April 21st, 1983, Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid, and a myriad of matches in between before Dynamite, of course, by late 84, is off to the WWF with his boy, Davey Boy. Davey Boy. And they, of course, become the British Bulldogs. That'll wrap up an awesome episode of the main event. Kevin Kelly is the best. Check out, of course, New Japan Pro Wrestling. He is the voice. And check out all the stuff on the New Japan Pro Wrestling app. Of course, when you're watching on Access, you're going to get JR and Josh Barnett, which is fine. They're very good. And I didn't want to allude.
Doesn't sound like for much longer, though, based on what he was saying.
Yeah, based on what he was saying, I guess not, huh? Yeah. So check that out. Of course, Wrestle Kingdom 13 is on January 4th. This Sunday, guys, is TLC. We could talk about that briefly. I think Becky retains the title in the three-way. I don't know what they're going to do about the fucking Strowman Corbin stuff, since apparently, Strowman's got one arm, but maybe he doesn't anymore. Who knows? But it's 12 matches. Pretty meaty for a December pay-per-view. So we'll see what happens. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We will be at the end of the year. I think we'll hold off on our end-of-year special. Maybe we'll do that the first episode of 2019, let the year finish. But what we will do in 2 weeks, even though Kevin Kelly was telling us it was utter garbage, we're trying to avoid it being utter garbage, but unfortunately, Steve gets nightmares now trying to watch these shows. We're up to number 12 of our TNA Classic pay-per-view recaps. 12! Come on, Steve. 12 episodes. I'm pretty impressed. We've gotten 12 in. Isn't that nuts? 12. Double digits. Not bad. Now, the question I have, guys, and you said it yourself, Nate, is when they start a fresh night of tapings, does Ed Ferrara return? Because, again, the only reason we haven't had him the last couple weeks is because he wasn't there that night. So if they are live with this next one, which would be – actually, remember, they took a couple weeks off. They did actually, we're skipping a number. Yeah. This is going to be episode 13, actually, because episode 12 was a recap of the first 11 shows in terms of the X Division. Of course, we've documented the fact that the X Division's been fucking great and pretty much carrying the thing early on. So episode 12 was an X Division recap. We're not going to do that show, obviously. Then they took the following week off to respect the 1-year anniversary of 9/11, so they didn't do one. So we're going to go to, I believe it is September 18th, 2002, with episode 13, and we will crown new NWA TNA Tag Team Champions, because they're vacant right now. And we'll continue on with Ron Killing's TNA title run, which has been actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So that'll be coming up in 2 weeks. For Brother Nate, for Brother Steve, and for the great Kevin Kelly, I am Scott Criscolo. Been in the main event. Merry Christmas. We will talk to you one more time in 2018. Have a good 2 weeks.
Hey, Steve Willie.
Yes, Nick.
You have failed this podcast.